Hi friends, welcome to this session on net zero. Net zero and carbon neutrality are the two common names which we are using while we talk about climate change. When we talk about the net zero, that means the company is trying to achieve a reduction in its carbon emissions. There are various definitions to achieve net zero. The first part is that we want to become net zero carbon, and that is also known as carbon neutrality. That means if I have an office and I have certain carbon emissions, I calculate my carbon emissions and I achieve net zero carbon or my carbon neutrality. That means I have to equivalent reduction of carbon emissions in some other operations or somewhere else. That becomes the carbon neutrality. But when we talk about the net zero includes not only the carbon. Net zero is derived from various aspects. You may want to become net zero carbon, not only the net zero carbon, but you may want to become net zero water. You may want to become net zero energy and net zero waste. For example, if you want to become net zero in energy, whatever energy you are consuming through grid, if you are producing equivalent energy as a summation of on-site solar power generation and off-site solar power generation, that means you are able to achieve your net zero target in energy. Same way, if you are able to achieve your waste, that means whatever waste you are generating, you are sending it for reducing, recycling and reuse. And you are also participating in some program like plastic reduction program of Vera and purchasing those credits also, then you can achieve the net zero waste. And in the same fashion, you can achieve net zero water also. If you have a building and if that building is consuming certain amount of water from the municipal supply, and in that case, if you are able to capture the equivalent amount of rainwater within your area through rainwater harvesting pits, and you recharge your aquifer and reduce your consumption from municipal supply through putting a water treatment and STP plant, then also you can achieve your net zero water targets. So net zero and carbon neutrality are two aspects when we talk about the climate change and achieving the net zero targets. So to achieve the net zero targets, it was specified in Article 6 of Paris Agreement that companies should strive to reach their net zero targets, and not only the companies but even countries should also strive to achieve their net zero targets. Like in Europe, the EU has taken a target of 2050 as net zero. India has taken target of 2070 to reach to their net zero targets. There are many companies who have taken early targets also, like Google. They want to achieve net zero target by 2030. So not only the example of a building, but it is for the country also. So if India want to achieve net zero targets, what it has to do is, as India, the emissions are happening from coal, whatever we are burning, the crude oil which we are burning as country. These are the two major sources of emissions. The coal is being used for electricity production, the oil is being used for process industries, even in transportation and other applications. So if India want to achieve its net zero target, then it has to displace the coal and oil or crude consumption significantly, and we have to keep on increasing our renewable portfolio. So Government of India introduced some schemes like RPO, Renewable Portfolio Obligation. So the companies have to have certain targets. As high as 20% of the electricity should be from renewables. So this proportion of renewables India will keep increasing, and we plan that through various methods we will reach to our net zero target by 2070. And big corporates are participating in these targets on voluntary basis. Now, the Paris Agreement specifies the market-based mechanism also to achieve net zero target. Suppose, for example, the Google, they want to do tree plantation in Africa and achieve the reduction of CO2 emission through tree plantation. That is known as removal. They can claim the equivalent reduction elsewhere as part of their targets. So they are helping some country like a Congo in Africa to reduce their carbon emissions by putting the forestry initiatives. This not only helps in reduction the GHG emissions, but it also helps the local livelihood and their sustainability aspects. So the new Paris Agreement is focusing on net zero basis. As a green building professional, we also plan that the buildings should also achieve net zero targets, and there are many certifications available from the various certificating agencies like USGBC has the net zero energy, net zero water, net zero waste and net zero carbon. And same ways we have various other standards also including IGBC and GRIHA to achieve net zero certification in buildings also. So the companies can achieve this as a voluntary part and report this in their annual reporting of the CSR initiatives. As per SEBI guideline, it is mandatory for top 100 companies to disclose their emissions. The environmental reporting has become mandatory for these companies, and that is the reason net zero has become very, very important aspect. I'm sure this will give you a clear idea about the net zero. And when we talk about net zero, the Kyoto Protocol and after that this Paris Agreement talks about science-based targets. When we talk about the science-based target, it defines a diet plan to reduce your emissions. So what they are saying is, let us have the initiatives which are quantifiable and verified and backed up by science. If you are doing any of those activities, they are also part of your net zero initiatives. Read a lot about this. We have left some guideline books available to you for further reading. Thank you.